Swinburne University of Technology.
I wanted to also talk about personal state. When I go in to do the work of transformation inside organisations, I try to get a sense of what sort of state people are in, because people are burnt out. People are, what would you say, that some people are cynical. People have endured inside organisations. It hasn't always been easy, and the life inside organisations can be really difficult. So I often look at the state, and there's also external factors. Anna, when she saw me put this picture up, she said to me, you having a beautiful moment with your 8-month-old baby. That wasn't my experience of it, in fact. This is me grabbing a moment's sleep in the whirlwind of what turned out to be one of the most profound changes in my life. You know, it was having children made me a better leader. It's made me better inside organisations. But early days it was very tricky. I'd used to being in control. I'd used to, you know, crafting out exactly what I wanted to happen, and it always happened. And then children came along and they help you to readjust and rethink about being more adaptive and more creative in the way that you try to respond and shape systems to do what you want them to do fundamentally. So this was me with Matthew. So personal state does matter. It matters how you feel about what you're doing. It matters how resourced you are, and there's a lot of work and research now about how to build energy, how to maintain energy, how to create focus, and of course the work of resilience, which is largely about finding meaning in what we're doing. You can be extraordinarily resilient if you're deeply connected to the outcomes of what you're doing. But we often forget why we're doing what we're doing. Okay, so that's about personal state. And I guess I'd wrap that all up and say the work of transformation, in creating transformational leaders, it's often about getting them to have some clarity about why they're doing what they're doing, what are the values that they're coming from, and why are they actually willing to put themselves out there to work with other people. So it's about being strong and clear about your own role, and also then from that being able to influence and relate to others in a way that is truly transformational, so that you understand what it feels like to have individual consideration, because you know yourself as an individual. You know what it's like to be challenged because you challenge yourself. You know what it's like to be inspirational because you inspire yourself. And finally, you know what it's like to be a role model because you seek out role models and you start to craft your own behaviours towards being a role model. And this is both the sensational work of transformational change and the ordinary work. Because the interesting thing with transformation is that people only have to have a transformational moment. They don't have to be Richard Branson. They just have to step forward in that moment and say something that shifts people. So really, by way of setup, that was all I wanted to say to you about the domain of, and really the psychosocial domain of creating transformational leaders and transformational change. There is a huge quantity of research and data that is out there, but I've really tried to take a cook's tour of that, really to open up the conversation and also to show, I guess what I would also say, that the work of transformational leadership is the work of vulnerability. And it can be incredibly challenging to speak about insecurities in doing this work. And a lot of the work I talk about, a lot of the individuals I work with at the moment, we're talking a lot about vulnerability. We're talking a lot about feeling like a fake. It's difficult sometimes to come to terms with the sorts of roles that people occupy. How do you put your hand on your heart at the end of a year after you've earned, you know, $4.75 million? How do you demonstrate that you've delivered value? How do you demonstrate that you've actually done a good job? How do you live up to the anxiety that creates in all of us to do the best we can all the time? So I always say when I'm working with leadership is that it's certainly important to create accountability, but it's also important to create compassion. And compassion for self is the starting point of taking greater risks and also starting to deal with the human condition, which is the fabric of culture and the fabric of change.
This has been a Swinburne production.